how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. On this episode, I sat down with my dear friend Marty Dodson. He is a professional songwriter, a hit songwriter, if you will. He's also founder, along with Clay Mills, of SongTown, which is an online community of musicians and creatives. And I'll have links for that on the links page on heyhumanpodcast.com. You can look into SongTown. Marty has 6 number 1 hit singles and over 100 cuts, including Let Me Down Easy, Must Be Doing Something Right, Everybody Wants to Go to Heaven. His new stuff is that's out right now. He's got a Blake Shelton single, Doing It to Country Songs, For the Party, Big and Rich, I Don't Want to Let You Go on the Texas Tenors, and a song called Love Me Loud on Tara Shannon's record. Marty is a great guy. He's a former youth pastor. He's one of my most favorite people on the planet. I love sitting down and chatting with Marty. He's very wise. He's very loving. He's incredibly funny. And an all-around great guy. I was really thankful that he took some time to sit with me and talk. It's been a crazy week. There's massive flooding in Houston right now, and it's really beautiful to see everyone come together to help. Tons of rescue workers are there. People who aren't first responders. I mean, the first responders clearly are there, but just regular folk, regular human beings jumping in their trucks, hauling boats, and going around and helping people and helping animals get to safety. And it's really beautiful. You can donate money to the Red Cross. Their efforts will continue. So if you feel like donating, Red Cross is going to be, my guess is they're going to be in Houston for quite a while. And I think I read on the news this morning that Louisiana is perhaps also going to have some issues. So, yeah. I was actually at the grocery store yesterday. I picked up something last night on my way home, and there were 2 giant U-Hauls being filled with donations of food and toiletries and feminine products and just the basics, water, tons of water. And those U-Hauls were going to be taken up to Houston. So it's heartening to see that stuff. The usual order of business, heyhumanpodcast.com. You can find all the links from different episodes, the stuff we talk about, books we reference, movies, my guests, any of their websites, Facebooks, all that stuff. It's all on the links page. A lot of good information on there. And let's see, Instagram and Facebook. Feel free to follow those things and like those things. I'm on Twitter, Susan Ruthism. SUSANRUTHISM. And I don't know if you want to learn more about me, because I never really talk about me a whole lot. I think I did last episode, just because I'm, just to get the word out. I'm also a painter. You can find my work at vividgallery.org. So VIVIDGALLERY. And then, of course, my music website is susanruth.com. And all my music that I've written for myself is on iTunes under Susan Ruth. So if you want to check that out, please do. And I write songs for lots of other people, and you can find the discography of that on my susanruth.com website for some of the artists that I've written for. Follow me on the social medias. Please go to iTunes and rate and review Hey Human Podcast. It would be awesome if you did that. Our numbers are growing. It's so exciting. I'm super stoked. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spreading the word. I've been getting a lot of people telling their friends and family and posting about it on Facebook, and it's just super cool. So love you guys, and keep listening. If you want to email me, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com, and maybe you have somebody you'd like to recommend for the show, someone's interesting and has a cool story, please let me know. I'm always on the lookout. We've got some really exciting episodes coming up. And if you haven't gone back and listened to the back catalog, I think this is episode 63. So there's a ton of really fascinating people that I've spoken with. Feel really lucky about that too. Okay, enough about that. Let's get going. Here we go. Hi, Marty Dodson.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for being on Hey Human.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm really happy about that.
Glad to be your guest human.
Yes! How's it going?
Very good.
Are you enjoying your Sunday so far?
I am.
Marty, you and I have been friends for a very long time.
Yes, we have.
How long has it been now? 11 years? 10 years?
Probably, yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
I'd say 10 years.
Where does the time go?
I know. It flies. We were just children when we met.
I know. Babes in
Look
the
at us
woods.
now, all grown up.
Yeah. 30 is a good year.
It is awesome.
Over and over again. You have obviously you're a hit songwriter, and that's really interesting, cool, and I'd love to talk about that. But you and I, once upon a time, started a conversation about what you did pre-songwriter life. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. Where are you from? What was your upbringing and that kind of thing?
So I grew up here in Nashville.
Yeah.
I was born in California, but my dad got out of the Air Force like 5 months later, and we moved to Michigan with my grandparents for a little while, and then kind of moved around until he got a job offer in Nashville, so we moved here.
You know, I thought you were born here. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I was
okay.
not.
Well, that's all right.
Apple Valley, California.
All right. I won't hold it against you or anything.
There you go. Well, so I lived here since I was 5, mm-hmm. and grew up in what I felt like was a pretty normal, kind of middle to lower middle class home, mm-hmm. Until I was about 12, at which time I realized there was some weird stuff going on in my family, and so it took a while, I guess, before I started asking the questions of, why is Dad not go to work a lot, and some things happening. And
was he still military at that point?
No,
okay.
He was an industrial engineer at that time, so he worked at a plant that made boots. And so there became this pattern of he would miss work a lot, and then he would tell us he was sick, and then he got fired from a job, and sort of a family crisis, and so then he got another job, but it kind of became this pattern of him getting fired from jobs, and and then money troubles and all that. And so finally I realized as I got a little older that he had a drug problem. Mm. He was abusing prescription medications. So to condense the story a little bit, my mom had to go back to school. She got her RN. She was an associate nurse. She had kind of done that just a little bit, working as a nursing tech, I guess, and so she went back to school and worked full-time and got her RN and began working full-time as an RN. And she would work at night so she could be home when we got home from school and cook dinner.
Were they still together at this point?
Yeah, they stayed together till they both, till they passed away. But things were, like with my dad, it got more invasive. The drug stuff would be, then he started getting in wrecks because he would drive impaired, and then
no alcohol though. It was
just the prescription narcotics.
Yeah.
And so
he was kind of ahead of his time because that's real big now.
Yeah, he was a trendsetter.
He was.
But so it became more of it just spread as those things do across the family. It kind of became the family secret of, I didn't want to talk about that to people, and I was raised in a very conservative church, and we went to church all the time, and we were very involved there, and I didn't know anybody else at church whose dad was a drug addict. So. And
was he able to hide that? Was he maintaining that secret?
Well, by this time, he wasn't going to church by this time, and then he couldn't hold a job, and and so there was a lot of friction between he and my mom because she's working full time and making money, and he's blowing it all on drugs and that kind of thing, and a lot of stressful, bill collectors calling and all kinds of that, that kind of stuff.
Where was he getting his drugs?
Well, there people who I discovered through this whole deal that there's plenty of doctors who will just write you a prescription for whatever you want if you pay them. So he would go to, quote, legit doctors, but there's kind of this underground network that people, I guess, spread the word. This guy will give you whatever you want. So They pay for an office visit. He writes them up as back pain or whatever, and they get a prescription for narcotics.
Legalized drug dealing.
And back then there wasn't. Now they have a system where you're logged in every time if you buy a narcotic or if you buy Sudafed or these things that are abused. There's a system where all pharmacies can see if you're doing it. But what he would do is he would go to a doctor, get a prescription. He would go to a pharmacy, get it filled, and then a few days later, he'd go to a different doctor and go to a different pharmacy, and there's no communication between any of those, so he could just get unlimited narcotics.
Things have changed. I mean, I guess now all the pharmacies talk to each other, or?
Yeah, that's what I mean. The state, I think there's a state system now where, when you buy one, you're logged in, so that Kroger could see, oh, he got one at Walgreens 2 days ago, and refuse it. But there was also a network of independent pharmacies who would give you whatever. Yeah. And so he kind of found these places that were shady, and they would just take your money and
now, what year was this?
This would have been like late 70s, I guess.
Late 70s. Yeah. Okay. And your dad probably didn't have to go off to Vietnam because he was an engineer, right?
No, he
too young, maybe.
He was on the runway being sent 2 or 3 different times, and they canceled his group being sent, so he never went.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, so he was very fortunate in that regard.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, he would do, when I was 15, I actually called the, Tennessee Drug Enforcement people and told them all these pharmacies and all these doctors.
You did?
And they were kind of like, oh, okay, we'll look into it. And never, it was really weird. I don't know if they thought because I was a kid, I didn't know all this stuff.
Did anyone in your family know you were going to make that phone call?
No.
Wow, that takes a lot of bravery.
It was my way of fighting back a little bit, I guess. I mean, it was it's one of those things where you're very helpless to. I mean, there was nothing much I could do about it, So we would do things like if I found his pill bottle hidden in the couch cushion, I might flush him down the toilet or something like that, and put him back, and then he'd be enraged. That's who did this and that kind of thing, and you'd get very angry. But so I guess it was a way of feeling like there was some little bit of control or ability to fight back.
Did you and your mom have conversations about what was going on with your dad, or did she sort of have the don't ask, don't tell policy?
No, she was always very open with me once I asked, and she didn't volunteer, and she was very loyal to him. To a fault, in my opinion. My brother and I begged her to leave him multiple times, because when things would get really bad or whatever, and she felt like, back to that church thing, she said, I told him, it's for better or worse, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so we stayed until, when I moved out, when I was 19, I got a job as a youth minister. And they had a mobile home beside the church. And I was like, can part of my compensation be this mobile home? And it was junker. But I lived in this trailer, so I moved out when I was 19.
Was your brother still there at the house?
He stayed there about a week after I moved out, and then he asked if he could move in with me, so he lived with me when he was 16 until he went to college.
Wow. Mm-hmm. How did your parents feel about that?
Well, I mean, my mom didn't like. She didn't like it in the sense that she didn't have her kids around. Yeah. But she understood, and we had told her earlier, much earlier in life, we thought she should leave. So she wasn't at all surprised, and it wasn't far. It was like she could come visit us or whatever. But
how did you and your brother deal differently with the situation? Most siblings have a varying degree of personality. Mm-hmm. I know that for me and my family, my brothers are totally different than I am. So how did you turn to each other? How did you?
No, I think it was more of, and I don't know if this is because I'm the oldest child, and he's the youngest. If that affected that, probably did. But I think I tried to do more about it and kind of became the man of the house at about 13. I would be, I just took it upon myself to mow the grass or to trim the bushes, or just to do things that need to be done around, and to take care of my brother, those kinds of things. So I was trying to take up the slack of things that would typically be, my dad's job and that kind of thing. I think his response was more to ignore that it was happening. I think there was some denial more. But he and my dad would get into more angry arguments, and more. They had one time had a physical confrontation and that kind of thing. But I didn't get into any of that. I just tried to make the situation as best it could be, and pretty much.
Yeah.
And flush pills when I found them. Things like that. Little passive aggressive things.
Did your dad stay addicted his whole life?
Well, when my first child was born, I just had a conversation with my dad when we were pregnant with him, and said, I'm not going to raise my kids around this. The things I saw, they're not going to see. So you can choose whether you want grandchildren or you want drugs. And so he went into a methadone treatment program, which was still a drug, but it was he functioned fine on that. So when he got on the methadone, he could, he didn't appear high, he didn't, do all the things that he would, fall asleep in a conversation and those kinds of things. So he got on that, was great. Was a great grandfather to them, and stayed on that pretty much, I guess, their whole lives until he passed away. He was on the methadone thing, but toward the end of his life, he got back on some other. I guess he was having more pain, and got back on the some other narcotics too, and started kind of headed back the other way.
So heroin, was that his choice?
No,
my eldest brother, he did the methadone thing. It took him a couple times to quit heroin, so I didn't know if that was what the go-to was for, or it just doesn't matter, any opioid. He
never did heroin. His was like hydrocodone.
Okay.
And
which they're all in the same family, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you and your brother never had any kind of drug issue, no desire because of what you saw.
Yeah, I think it was such an ugly thing.
Yeah.
I didn't have a drink of alcohol till I was in my 30s because of that, all of that stuff.
It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation with your mother about why? Because your dad passed before your mom, right?
No, other way around.
Oh, really? Other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever talk to your mom about, like, as an adult? Adult perspectives are always so different.
Yeah, I did. I mean, and she was very, he had been injured when he was in the Air Force. He was on the wing of a fighter plane, and they started it, and he was thrown off and onto the concrete and that kind of thing. And so he claimed that he had back pain from that, and some things like that went on through his life, and so she defended that. To me, it looked like much more of a choice than a need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the same with my brother. It was back pain that started him on the pills, and then they were never strong enough after a while. And
right.
It's although he did say quitting cigarettes was harder than quitting heroin.
Really?
That says a lot about how bad cigarettes are. So, okay, let's go backwards again. Youth pastor. Was that something when you were a teenager or a kid, you were like, I'm going to grow up and be a pastor?
No, it was actually a really, I didn't think of this until recently. I was doing this self-awareness stuff with some corporations, with the corporate work that I do, and I realized that I had never chosen that job. So I had, when all the stuff was going on with my dad, there was a youth minister at our church that I became really close to, and so he kind of became a father figure to me, and mentor, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so I started, when he asked if I would be willing to work with him sort of as an intern one summer, so I did that, and then he wound up going to another church and getting a job somewhere else out of town, and the church asked me if I would fill in for him, so I filled in for him because I'd been working with him, and that went well, so they asked me if I'd stay on for a while, so I did that. And then in college I got another offer from somebody else to do youth ministry, so I went to this other place, and then when I graduated, they offered me a full-time job with the trailer.
Did you study theology in college?
I was I was doing the youth ministry before I went to college, so when I went to college, I started off, I was going to be a dentist, and then I decided I didn't want to do that. kind of decided.
You'd be a good dentist. You'd have a good bedside manner
people's
for that.
Mouths.
I know. Well, there is that.
There's that.
But your personality, you'd be a kind dentist, I feel like.
But I just decided I wanted to be a dentist because it seemed like they made a lot of money and they didn't have to work very hard. And I thought, that's probably not a great life program, not a great motivation. So I was interested in psychology. I was doing the youth ministry. So I thought, well, if I keep doing the youth ministry, psychology would be a good major to have. Mm-hmm. And then I minored in Bible. So I kind of had a minor in Bible, major in psychology. But really, I guess during college, kind of thought, well, I keep getting offered these jobs, so maybe I should do this, So I just kept taking those jobs, and about 10 years later, I woke up one day and was like, wait, I didn't necessarily pick this. I think I enjoyed it in some aspects, and I think I was good at it in some ways, but I had this kind of early midlife thing, I guess, where I went, this is not really what I chose to do.
Was this pre-children, pre-marriage?
No, this was when children started coming along, because it became the times that I had to work with the kids at church were times when they were out of school, which meant nights or weekends, and then so I'm not with my kids as much on nights or weekends, and so it became something I did. I thought I want to figure out what I want to do, not what is just the easiest thing that
the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Well, I am curious. So I mean, I don't know that I know any youth pastors. So what does that mean exactly? What is the responsibility of a youth pastor? What was your day-to-day? You get the call from God in the morning.
Talk to God in the morning, then you
get the itinerary.
Call people and you go, here's what God wants you to do. No.
Or more
I was in charge.
Not to do.
That's right. Most specifically. So I was in charge of all programming for 7th through 12th grades.
Okay.
So I was in charge of their Sunday school classes and making sure we had teachers, making sure setting the curriculum. I was in charge of planning activities like retreats or summer camp and all those
no
things.
Masturbating game.
All those things, yeah. So I would just plan everything involving the teenagers at church.
Yeah. It must have been really interesting. I mean, teenagers in general, highly, emotional, their hormones are going crazy. They're not thinking straight. They're always hungry or tired. It's wrangling bears, basically.
I really enjoyed it more than I did working with adults in that there was a purity of, they didn't know what questions you weren't supposed to ask, or they didn't know that you weren't supposed to ask why we do things this way. I think.
Did they ask a lot?
Yeah, they did ask a lot of questions.
That's great.
Like, I don't understand why they say you can't do this, and so where most of the adults were like, well, that's just what we do. It was nice to have that, to catch them when they're kind of forming their own thoughts and to really be able to encourage them to think on their own and maybe not necessarily.
Was critical thinking part of how you went about it? Where you, because I do think that my parents were great with this, that, they said, we can't tell you what to believe. We'll tell you all the options. We'll tell you all the things going on in the universe, and then it's up to you, and we'll support you with whatever. And I feel like that's your personality as well. Did you have some moments where the kids were like, this God thing doesn't make sense to me, and then how did you deal with stuff like that?
Yeah,
because I imagine you have a job description where you have to sort of keep the flock together, know.
Well, you're sort of and this became the rub that eventually led to me getting out of it in many ways, is that you're the poster boy for something, and so if the poster boy starts to change his viewpoint or teach something different, then that causes problems, so I think I grew into, when I was 18, 19, I was working at the churches. I think I was very conservative. My parents had, my mom had always taught me, there was no racism in our home or no judgmental attitudes. There was not gossip or, so I was always taught to treat everybody with respect. And in fact, one time I had a friend at school who was Korean, and he invited me to come over to his house and play. And I asked my mom if I could do that, and she said sure. So I went to his house and played. And she said, "Why don't you invite him over here next week?" And his parents wouldn't let him come to our house because we were white. And that just didn't compute with me as a kid. I was probably 7, but they said he can't come to your house. You can come here, but we can't come to your house. And I just didn't understand that because we had never, they had never told me that black kids can't come to our house or Korean kids or
right, sure.
any of that. So that was kind of my first experience with racism. But so my family in that regard was very open-minded and progressive, I felt like, for the time. But religiously, the churches we went to were very, very straight-laced. Like, you're going to go to hell if you use an instrument in worship, or,
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean,
so wait, which church is that there?
Church of Christ.
Church of Christ. So you're allowed to sing, you're just not allowed to sing to a piano or a guitar or whatever.
Right.
What? And why is that? I always wondered about that.
Because God hates it.
God hates instruments?
No, well, the scripture that they used was a scripture that says, "Sing and make melody in your heart." So they took that to mean you can't use anything else. And I became one of those people that questioned, like, well, if we have a songbook, isn't that other than your heart? Like, shut up, kid.
Yeah.
Don't ask that question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I started off in a really conservative place, and I kind of grew into, probably from being asked these questions by teenagers that I didn't have a good answer to, because I've never been a person who's willing to go, well, just because. I mean, I want to be able to give them a reason, and if I honestly looked at it and saw that there wasn't a reason, then that kind of shook my framework, I guess. So I think I kind of grew into a more open, critical thinking type person, and started thinking for myself more from being in that position of having to answer those questions.
So did you have I know that your mentor that you had in the beginning left to go to another church, but as the kids are asking you these questions and you're starting to question, did you have somebody that you could go to and say, this A plus B is not equaling C to me, right? What?
A few, not a lot, because in our, Church of Christ groups, I guess, it was pretty conservative, so I became one of the most progressive, liberal, I guess, youth ministers in Churches of Christ, and because of that was able to do some cool stuff that kind of opened some minds to different things, I think, which I guess maybe was the reason I was there at that time. I don't know, but yeah.
People, were you also vilified for that? I imagine there were some folks not too thrilled about it.
Oh yeah, there were numerous people that tried to get me fired and various things like that.
So Harbor Valley PTA is very exciting.
Very much so. Sometimes I joke with people, not really joking, but that I got out of church work and went into the music business because music's so much less corrupt. Yeah.
Oh man, that's very good. Did you go to Lipscomb? Is that where you went to college?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I did.
Yeah, that's a good school.
It's a very good school. Yeah. And it has opened up a lot since I was there too. I mean,
I suppose that makes sense.
When I was there, you couldn't wear shorts.
Really?
Things like
Boys
that.
or girls?
Nobody could wear shorts. Yeah.
Times have changed. Now shorts are very short.
Some of them are, yes.
Yes, they almost look like underpants.
Yes, they do.
How did well, I guess it's a two question. So your children are lovely. I know that.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And the background that you've had with the family dynamic, having that tumultuous childhood, and then the religious setting, how did that shape you as a father? What did...
Well, I mean, I think I saw a lot of things, obviously, from my dad that I did not want to copy. I think he gave me a lot of opposite role model, things of, here's what you don't do.
Yeah.
But I think I had a little more anxiety about what do you do. When my first child was born, I had never changed a diaper. I didn't. So, I mean, I had no, nurturing skills. I don't think. I think I have a nurturing heart, maybe spirit, but
Absolutely.
But I had no nurturing skills, so I had to work really hard. I read a lot of books, which is kind of what I've always done. In like because of my mom and dad had a very tumultuous marriage, and all that. So I would read a lot of books about marriage and about relationships, trying to find those good role models of, okay, well, I know what's not supposed to look like. What should it look like?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that with parenting. I read a lot of parenting books and that kind of thing. But, I think, when they came along too, I just thought, well, I'm going to give this everything I've got. And I want to give them a much different experience than I had, and I want to shield them from that kind of thing going on in the home. I didn't want us to have like this family secret kind of thing like we had growing up. So
was it difficult? I feel like when you grow up in that sort of environment, having experienced myself in it, that learning how to be in an intimate relationship after that is really difficult. It takes a lot of growth and a lot of self-reflection and learning just to navigate even some of the most basic things like conversation or confrontation without screaming or whatever.
Yeah.
You develop a sense that love equals this one thing when in fact that's not the thing at all. So how did your wife at the time, obviously you're not married to her anymore, but did your wife at the time understand where you were coming from, or do you feel like you kept that insular within yourself and you just came at it?
I think I kept a lot of it in. As time went by, I revealed more and more, but I think as I revealed things, I didn't get the feedback that she was all that interested in helping unpack that luggage, and so I think I packed some of it back up, and I mean, I think it's something I still struggle with. If I'm in a conversation with someone where they are passionate and they are kind of, leaning in to me, that triggers me, and it freaks me out because I go back to that place with my dad and yelling and all that, and so to me it feels like that's the first step to escalating into the other, so I kind of shut down, and so I have to. It's something I'm still working on. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate those waters of allowing my partner to be passionate and upset without me taking that as you're about to start screaming and throwing things.
Right. It is fascinating, isn't it? It seems. I often think the process of growing up and growing wise and understanding and really embracing what love means, the unconditional kind, it really is a lifetime experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. Well, and the older I get and the more I talk about my family scenario, the more I find that more people than not have things. Just they have baggage, they have difficult things, and that I just rarely meet anybody that goes, no, it was all perfect growing up in our family. Nobody ever fought. We didn't have any money problems. We didn't, no substance problems. And all the kids were perfect. But at the time when you're going through it, it feels like I don't hear anybody else talking about this. So it was a very lonely feeling of I don't know who to talk to about this and what to do about it.
I'm always suspect those people that say their family life was so perfect because if you scratched under the surface, I bet you could uncover some stuff that maybe they didn't even know was going on or something.
Yeah. I think those are the psycho killers.
Yes.
One day they just snap.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Ted Bundy, good example. Apparently, he supposedly had a great upbringing.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And
Theory proven.
He turned out okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you're in a religion that eschews musical instruments. How did you sneak your guitar playing? How did you turn to that and become?
No, it wasn't that they were against playing musical instruments. It was just not to God. So you could sing secular songs, not at church, but so there was no instruments at church. But it was not that they were opposed to instruments.
Oh, okay.
Their view was just that God wants you to sing
in church,
from your heart.
from your heart.
Right.
Yes.
And
your diaphragm.
And for your diaphragm. And if you were going to sing songs to God on your own time, you risk. I mean, that's between you and God, but probably that's not cool.
Yeah, better have a tuner. Is all.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. So, how old were you when you picked up an instrument and started?
11.
Were you always creative?
Yes. I've always loved words. And that's still the piece of songwriting that I'm way better at than melodies is the words. And so, like, when I was in 6th grade, they had a contest. It was like a Freedom America rah-rah contest or something. You're supposed to write a patriotic essay, and they had some prizes or whatever that you could win, and I forgot to do it, which I was so upset because I loved that. So my teacher said, I'm going to take up your essays, and while she was taking them up, I wrote one, and I won for the whole school. And so I was like, that was weird. You know, maybe I have a talent with words. And I had a grandmother who would, I guess when I was about 7 or 8, she started sending me blank notebooks. And she would tell me to fill them up with poetry and then send them to her, or writing. So I would write little short stories or write poems. And I would send them to her, and she would get them published in her newspaper. And she lived in a smaller town.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so she would send me these newspaper clippings with my name and the poem and all that kind of stuff. So she really, I think, was the first influence that encouraged me to write. And then as I got those things happening in school, I thought, wow, I seem to be pretty good with words, you know, so.
What a great idea to do.
Mm-hmm.
All you nanas out there, and Mimis, and what are all the different grandma nicknames?
Mamaws.
That's right. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. That's one I want to do with my grandchildren someday.
I'm assuming your grandmother's passed.
Mm.
Did you get those back?
Yes,
journals?
I do have some of them, yeah.
That must be incredible to go through that stuff.
Yeah, and she left notebooks full of stories about relatives that I had not even known, and her parents and her grandparents and all that kind of thing. So it was a neat legacy thing, I guess, between her and me.
That's really cool. How old were you when you wrote your first song?
11.
Oh, so you out of the gate.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was about?
I think it was about the girl up the street.
Oh, no.
There was a girl up the street that she didn't notice me, but so I had to write, you know.
Did it work?
How do you like me now? No, I never played it for her. I would have been real chicken to play that for her. Yeah.
So when did you start performing?
Oh, wow. I didn't start performing really until, well, I worked at some church camps, like an all-summer camp kind of thing, like lasted all summer. And we would sit around and play like around the fire at night and that kind of thing, you know. So I did some of that. And I did a talent show once in high school, but I didn't really start performing until I got a songwriting deal as a staff writer. I'd never really desired to be a performer at all.
So if we go backwards a little bit, you've woken up one day and said, "Oh, this church pastor stuff isn't for me." After 10 years, where did that epiphany lead you? Did it lead you straight into the gates of hell of songwriting?
Well, what I did, I read a book called "What Color's Your Parachute." It's a great book that's been republished like 20 times or something. But it's about finding your passion and finding a career that aligns with your passion. So I read that book and I realized, you know, it asks you all these questions. You fill out all these things. And when I got to the end, the thing that it came up with that I should do is songwriting. And I thought, okay, I'm in Nashville. You know, the reason I had not done it is because everybody working on our air conditioner, the cable guy, the waitresses were all trying to be songwriters. So growing up, I didn't have any connection, and I just went to college and got a degree because that's what you do instead of chasing that. You know, Looking back, I wish I had the courage to try it, you know, early.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was early 30s when I started trying it.
And what happened?
So I guess for about 2 years, I quit being the youth pastor, and my ex-wife went to work full time.
Although current at that time.
Current at the time.
Yeah.
And so we kind of tag team parent. So she would, on the days she worked, I would write. On the days, opposite. So We did that for about 2 years, and then I got a staff writing deal, making a little bit, like $866 a month. And
that's an interesting number.
I know. I forget. It worked out to like some even amount, but so I started writing for Kim Williams, who's a Hall of Fame songwriter that just passed away recently. And he became really a mentor. I mean, he wasn't just my publisher. He really taught me how to write. He taught me how the business works, taught me, what choices to make, why certain things were smart or not smart, all those kinds of things. So he was invaluable to me in that regard. And while I was with him, I got my first hit song, which was Rascal Flatts' While You Loved Me, which was their first ballad. Went number 7. So that was a huge deal at the time, and more money than I had ever seen in one place.
$966.
I mean, well, when I was a youth minister, the highest I ever made was $30,000 a year. So, I got a big check for that song, and it was like,
whoa,
wow, what in the world?
Yeah, wow, it's crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The way, how so you're a psychology major and Bible. How does that influence your writing?
I think the psychology's been invaluable because I'm always, when you're writing, you're trying to think, what is the reaction going to be to this song? What's this going to cause people to feel? And the psychology comes in very handy there of, just knowing what drives people and what motivates people and how people think, all those kinds of things. So I think I use that every day.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite child of songs?
A favorite song?
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you what your favorite child is. They're all great. Yeah. No, I meant all my song children.
There's a song I wrote called Fire It Up that I love. It deals a little bit with racism, talks just about love in general, and like kind of poses the question, what's the harm in loving everybody? How would that be bad? And it was Joe Cocker's last number 1 too, which was cool.
Wow.
That was a career highlight.
Absolutely. Does it ever get old? Do you ever think, and then something happens and you don't get that fire? Is it always fire you up?
To hear someone sing my song?
Yeah.
No, I think it's still kind of surreal every time. There are artists like Joe Cocker that were sort of iconic to me, or just people that I would buy their records and then they're recording my songs. Like Don Williams did one of my songs, and the Oak Ridge Boys. And I grew up listening to those people, and so to hear them sing it is just amazing. But also, to hear even a young artist that says, "Hey, I want to do that song," or they sing it is amazing to me. I think the coolest thing is actually being somewhere and hearing the song and have people sing along. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the coolest thing. Is just to be at a concert where the artist is singing it and to see people singing along to it, and you go, "Oh wow." I remember what happened the day we wrote that, and what the things we were laughing about, and
sure.
And all that. It's cool.
A lot of times I feel we write songs, and at least this works for me. Write a song and then realize after the fact that you were talking to yourself the whole time in the song. The little, speaking of psychology, like little therapy sessions. Do you get that a lot? Where you look at the song and realize your subconscious is trying to teach you or tell you something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to sit, growing up, we had a stairwell going into our basement, and I found that if you sit on the 4th step, you got this real cool echo, reverb-like thing. And so I would sit there on that 4th step and play my songs and all that, and that was my therapy. It's where I was never good at dating and relationships and all those kinds of things, and so I could write about the girls that didn't notice me at school, or all those things, and that was definitely my therapy.
Yeah. I know you were older when you got into the songwriting thing professionally, but did your parents, were they the classic parents saying, "Why don't you be a doctor?" or something, or were they supportive about it? Did they even bring it up, or?
They were always very supportive. My mom especially told me, she always said, you can be whatever you want to be. You're smart. You're hard worker, and you can do. And so I would joke and say, "What about the NBA?" Because I'm 5'6", and she'd say, "If you want to do that, I believe you could do it."
Hey, there's Mookie Blaylock.
Yeah, I know. See, and so I think I grew up with the idea that you can do anything you want to do, and with their blessing to do that. And no, they were thrilled that I found something I was excited about. And I'm sure there was some anxiety on their part about, well, how will he ever make money at that? What's going to happen there? But if there was, they never mentioned it to me.
Yeah. Did you have a moment of, as an adult, going back and sitting down with your dad and saying, "Hey, this really screwed up my childhood," or did you leave that, the forgiveness moment, as Oprah would say?
Mm-hmm. We had a number of really straightforward talks. Like I told you about the one with when my first child was coming along, about just kind of giving him an ultimatum. But
sure.
There were times toward the end of his life where we had conversations about, this was really hurtful to me. These things have been hard to get over. Mm-hmm. And, he cried and was sad that he had done those things, but then the next time I saw him, he'd be high. Mm-hmm. So I don't think any of that was ever resolved, other than I think I told him what I needed to say, and then the rest was on him, kind of thing.
Have you forgiven him for everything, do you think?
I don't think, in some ways I don't know how you forgive someone. I don't hold great animosity toward him. I'm able to appreciate that he was a great grandfather, and he did some very generous things for people that I saw, and so I see I think it's in perspective more than it's, I don't think he did I think he loved me. I don't think he did any of it. He was always a very generous person saying he loved you, and so I was never one of those where you felt like he's a cold, hard guy and you don't, can't get in there, So I feel like he loved me, and I can't explain why he did what he did. I don't like it, and I felt like he chose that over us on a number of occasions. So I don't know where to put that exactly, but I don't hate him. I don't, when I think about him, there's a lot of unpleasant memories associated with him, but I don't think there's anger or malice and I guess in that sense I've forgiven him.
Yeah. It's complicated when our parents who are supposed to be parental, mature and have it together, there's that moment in adulthood or, maybe late adolescent where you suddenly realize, oh wait, they're human. They're not superheroes. They're not perfect. Wait, what? I want a refund. Yeah. It's a weird, surreal thing.
Well, I think too, having now seen all my kids are pretty much out of the house, and so looking back on mistakes I made as a parent.
Like what?
I think being maybe too strict with the rules early on, maybe not listening as well as I should listen. When there was a problem, trying to deal with the problem instead of dealing with the child, and what's behind it. That if I was doing it now, I'd have a lot more wisdom. I think at the time you're just trying to survive and get through it.
Yeah.
But having seen those things, I go, well, I wasn't a perfect dad either. It's hard to say someone else should have been a perfect dad if you're not one. So
yeah,
I think that gave me a little more perspective on it as well.
Was it well, do you believe in you believe in God now? Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you believe in the traditional heaven sense where when you die you'll see people again? Do you believe in reincarnation? What's your belief system? Or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a fair answer, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up, obviously, with a very strict traditional view of there's a hot hell and there's a good heaven, and you're going to be in one place or the other. But I don't know. I mean, there's the older I get, the less I know about that kind of thing, And I think when, a lot of things that people go on and on about on Facebook about, climate change or whatever, we don't know. Really, we don't know. And so, I try to be very cautious about speaking out on things I don't know about, and to be much more quick to say, you know what, I'm not smart enough to talk about that with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
don't know that it's a question of smarts, but ignorance, I think. Just not knowing something.
Well, educated, smart, educated.
Yeah. I think human beings across the board have this strange hang-up about admitting when they don't know stuff. Or pontificating as if you know way more than you do just to win an argument.
Yeah.
I read something the other day. It was a little quote, which I'm going to, of course, completely annihilate because I can't remember exactly what it said, other than the gist of it was, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? In terms of dealing with another person. That it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, and you know what, I don't need to be right. For me, religion falls into that I don't need to be right category because
me too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have what they call faith and the things that I have faith in, but that works for me. And why? It's a very curious thing. I don't understand why we're so hell-bent, pardon the pun, on forcing people to think like we think.
And that was my biggest issue, I think, with the church work as time went on was, when my son was born, he was 4 years old when my daughter was born, and by that time I thought I pretty much got this parenting down, and then she comes along, nothing worked that worked with him, it didn't work with her. Discipline didn't work the same way. Feeding him didn't work, all these things, and then another daughter comes along, and I think, okay, I got boys and girls figured out. She's completely different.
Yeah.
And so it made me think about the church stuff of, I really believe that the people who have the deepest faith are the people who work out their own belief system, that works for them, that makes sense to them, and that feels true to them. And if you're at a church that says, well, you can't do it that way, you got to do it this way, everybody has to do it this way, it's kind of like taking your kids and going, well, I'm sorry, this worked for this kid, this is going to work for you. And that's why so many people get hurt by churches. That's why so many people leave churches and so many people are not there on Sundays, because what feels true and honest to them is being painted as not a legit deal,
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. It's like education. Not all children learn the same. And not all people worship the same. Not all. It's very wise. And I think that that's probably what made you such a good pastor, was that when kids said, this doesn't make sense, why? That you actually heard what they were saying and didn't. I got kicked out of Sunday school when I was a kid because I kept asking. They finally got fed up with all the questioning. But, if you don't know, then you don't know. And that's when...
And if you can't ask, you either just bite the bullet and accept what they tell you, or you leave.
Or you get pissed that you have to bite the bullet, and then there's a resentment building up. Which, again, is true with anything. You take religion out of it, insert any kind of, education, relationship, anything.
I got kicked out of a Music Row Bible study one time.
You did?
And I was the only one in the room who had been a pastor.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but they were saying
that's so funny.
This guy was talking about how to witness to your friends, and he said, I think the guy's name was Arthur Glick.
That's a fantastic name.
He said archaeologist Arthur Glick says that no archaeological find has ever disputed anything in the Bible, and everyone in the room went, "Whoa, that's powerful!" Whoa, they were going on and on about it, and I just raised my hand and said, "Who's Glick?" And they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "My friends are going to say, who's Glick? Who is he? Where did he go to school? What's he?" They didn't know. And they said, it seems like you're just trying to stir things up in here, so it'd probably be better if you didn't come back.
Critical thinking,
right.
0.
Yeah.
You heard Sunday.
So that was my first and last visit
Oh, man.
to the Bible study.
Didn't you get turned away from your church, too, when things went not so great with the ex-wife?
Not really. I mean, they didn't tell me I couldn't come. They,
just got weird.
I went through a divorce, and they said because you were a former minister, we're going to make an example of you because we don't want people to think that it's okay to get a divorce. So
Glass houses and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And stuff and rocks and all.
All the stuff.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart, as they say. Can't we all just get along?
I know.
Ah.
I have a song called "Why Can't We All Get Along and Drink Beer."
There you go.
See?
I like it.
That would be happy times.
That would be happy. Oh, well, except for I'm celiac, so cider, hard cider.
Gluten-free beer.
Yeah. Ugh. Actually, you turned me on to that one, Omission.
Uh-huh. I did.
Yeah. It was pretty good beer.
Yes.
I like, gluten-free beer is good when it's super cold.
Mm-hmm.
The minute it crosses that line into
yes, to room temperature.
It's not good at all
it's
anymore.
Not.
And
No.
it's bitter and yucky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of other... See, it's funny because when I've had a few people on the show where what they have done in their current life is famous. You are famous in your career path or your choice of careers. And it almost seems redundant to ask you about the stuff that's been asked a billion times. In every interview you've ever done, in every conversation you've ever had, everybody asks you the same questions. Mm. But that being said, the way things are these days in the industry, and everybody's got their opinion. And I'd like to actually promote you and Clay Mills have the SongTown,
mm-hmm.
and which is great. Could you talk a little bit about what that is? Fear of being redundant and you have to answer that question a million times.
So Clay and I have both been songwriters for a long time. He had a bunch of Darius Rucker hits, but we were talking one day, and we had a friend who'd been ripped off by somebody in Nashville, and we were talking about how it was embarrassing to have people come to Nashville thinking they're chasing my dream, and they get ripped off by some scam artist, And so we jokingly said, well, what if we were talking about why people fall for that, and it's because they tell them they're great, So they say, oh, you're amazing, your songs are awesome, give us $2,500 and we'll do a demo for you, and take all your publishing. And so we jokingly said, well, what would happen if you started a website and you told people the truth that your song sucks, and that's why you're not getting any interest in your song, but here's how to make your song better. And so we were like, that would never work. People won't do that. But we kind of kept the conversation going and finally thought, well, let's start a Facebook page and just see if we can do that. So we started a Facebook page telling people, here's how much demos should cost. Here's kind of how the system works. If someone wants this, that's unreasonable. And so then people started giving us questions that they had and sharing their stories about being ripped off and that kind of thing. And so it grew into, we now have like over 23,000 people on Facebook and on Twitter. And we started a website that's a subscription site where we do mentoring and we do online classes, and we just finished a 3-week staff writer crash course where we had a publisher come in and work with everybody as if they were staff writers, gave them assignments, graded their assignments, told them what worked and what didn't. And
that's so valuable.
So we're always just trying to help people understand how to write better and how the business works. So our laughing idea of would people respond if we tell them the truth, we found that early on we had some people say, well, so and so told me my songs are amazing. And we knew so-and-so was a scam person, and we would say, well, go ahead and work with so-and-so, but we're telling you, here's what's wrong, and some of those people came back to us and some didn't. But we've got a really overwhelmingly positive community of people who just really want to get better, and so they're open to hearing the truth, and they want to know if the song's not good,
and
that kind of thing. So
it is, I think placation doesn't last very long, especially if
lasts as long as your wallet.
Yeah, no kidding. And you've had a couple like rising stars in there too, right? There's been some.
Yeah, we've had some people get writing deals. We've had some people get cuts on major labels. We had somebody get a cut on an artist that I wrote with and did not get a cut. But yeah, we got some people that are really rocking on there.
That's great. SongTown.com? That's right.
That's the website. And then it's SongTown USA on Facebook.
Do you get any flack from any of the other songwriting mentorship things in town? Because, I mean, it's a small town, really. Mm-hmm. You don't wake up with, a broken guitar in your bed or anything.
No, we don't. Not that I know of. I mean, people might talk behind our back. I don't know. But, I mean, I feel like we...
Bless your heart.
Have established... I mean, I think we've established our credibility, and we're the only current pro writers that I know of that are doing something like this. So, the other people that are doing it are people that tried to be songwriters and weren't successful, or they were, formerly were in the business or something,
Sure.
So we kind of feel like we have our own little niche, and we're not trying to compete with anybody or knock anybody down. I think a lot of the other we love in SAI. I think they do great stuff.
Yeah.
And, so we don't feel like we're in competition with anybody.
Have you gone to the Hill, Capitol Hill, as a songwriter?
I have volunteered, but I haven't gone.
Yeah. So invaluable, I think. Mm-hmm. You'd be great at that. Surprised they haven't tapped you for that yet.
I think I would enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel like
I hate wearing a suit, though. Might be a drawback.
Maybe to take one for the team.
Maybe, I guess.
Yeah. Marty, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Send me any kind of links you want me to put on. I always put stuff on the heyhumanpodcast.com. I'll link to SongTown.
Oh, cool.
And then anything else?
My website needs to be updated badly, but it's martydodson.com.
Okay, Marty Dodson. Yeah. And then I'm gonna make you send me, not make you, but I'm gonna ask if
Bossy.
you. I know. I'm wearing very short bossy pants. No. See how I brought that around? Books that you could recommend to folks.
Okay.
That one, the parachute one, sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's great.
Most of the time, I feel like I forgot to pack my parachute, so I am
free falling.
Yes, I'm curious to know what number I would get. And the number 16, you should be a whatever it is, pastry chef.
That's right, maybe so.
That'd be a bummer one for a celiac.
When I was in middle school, they had this really crude system of there weren't even computers. This shows how old I am, but they had these punch cards, like computer punch card kind of things, and you took this test, and then you would put this pin through all these cards, and the ones would fall off that didn't apply to your thing. So it was like a job. You're supposed to tell you what jobs you should do.
Yeah.
And the fewer cards you had, the better you had done answering, and the more accurate it was supposed to be. And my best friend got race car driver and midwife.
No way.
Yeah, it's very traumatic. I think he's in prison now.
Oh my gosh. I wonder what you would have to pick to have midwife be the...
I have no idea. Likes children.
Likes moisture and children. Oh my gosh. Marty, thank you for being on Hey Human. I love you dearly.
Right back at you.